All right, guys, we are going to take a look at moving back and forth between decimals, percents, and fractions. So I'm going to take a couple problems from your homework and just show you how to do those once more, even though we went through a couple of them in class today. So converting decimals to percents, starting with 1.72. Easy way to do this, all we're doing is moving our decimal 2 spots to the right. So 1.72 is equal to 172%. Basically, all we're doing there is multiplying by 100. Taking another example here, let's do that guy. So 49.3%, if we want to go from a percent to a decimal, so we're going the opposite direction, all we do is move our decimal 2 spots to the left. And that's the same as dividing by 100. So 49.3% is the same as 0.493. Decimals to fractions. So on our roadmap, tells us kind of the long way to do that. What I told you in class, sometimes it's easier to just read the decimal out loud, and then that's what our fraction becomes. So if you look at our first one here, 1.44, so a lot of times we just read that as 1.44. But the correct way to read that is 1 and 44 hundredths. Okay, so basically just saying it out loud like that gives us the fraction part of that. So 1.44, you got one whole, and then you have 44 hundredths. And of course that could be reduced to 1 and 11/25. So if you divided that by 4. Another way to consider that, so if we look at the next one here, 0.662, the shortcut that I showed you is you just take the number, 662, you write it over a 1, and then you count the number of decimal places with 1, 2, 3 zeros. So saying it out loud or writing it with the number over a 1 and however many decimal places you have. And again, this guy could be reduced. If you divided that by 2, you get 331/500. Going from fractions to decimals, so this is the one that takes the most time. Let's take a look at, let's do 7/8. So we do this all the time in our grade sheets. This is how we calculate our percent. So this would basically be the points you earned divided by the points total. So it's 7 divided by 8. Be careful here. The 7 goes on the inside of the dividing bracket. So it's 7 divided by 8. We have our decimal point, which we bring straight up here. And then we ask, does 8 go into 7? The answer is no. We're going to add a 0. Does 8 go into 70? And it does, so that's going to be 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. Subtract those to get 6. And we've got some left over, so we're going to add another 0. Now we're going to check how many times does 8 go into 60, and that's going to be 7 times. So 7 times 8 is 56. We got 4 left over, so we're going to bring down one last 0 here. And then 8 goes into 40 5 times with nothing left over. So converting that fraction to the decimal would be 7/8 is equal to 0.875. And again, guys, really important there. These are equivalent values. So 7/8 and 0.875 have the same value. They're just in a different form. Fractions to percents. So basically it's the same process. So let's just use this same example here, fraction to percents. We converted the fraction to the decimal, and then just like with our decimals above, if you got 0.875, you want to turn that into a percent, you just move your decimal 2 spots. So that'd be 87.5%. So fraction to percents, I like to go basically fraction to decimal and then decimal to percent. You can, there is a different way to do that on your roadmap that I gave you, but I think that's probably the easiest way. And then percents to fractions, so that's the last one. So we've got 163%, and we want that to be converted into a fraction. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that we can do this. You can go from percent to decimal and then decimal to fraction. Or you can realize that all of our percents are always just written over 100. So 163% is basically 163 over 100. So all the time with your percents, you should have 100 on the bottom. The only time that doesn't work is when we have a decimal, because we're not really supposed to write decimals in fractions. Okay, so the way to get around that is move this one spot to the right for your decimal, and then move it one spot down here. So that actually gets you 835 over 1,000. And then you actually could reduce that. Let's see, we can divide that by 5 for sure. That's going to give me a 200 on the bottom. It's going to be 167, I think. 167 out of 200. So two different ways to go from percents to fractions. The other way, so 163%, we write that as a decimal. That's 1.63. And then we refer back to what we just talked about a little bit earlier. This is 1 and 63 100ths. Okay, so converting from percent to decimal and then using our trick from decimal to fraction. So I think that should cover pretty much all the different ways you have to work through this stuff today, guys. If you have any questions, make sure you stop by in the morning and ask for some help. Thanks for watching.